I don't know if this is gonna be the last video of the year. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. I don't care. I just want to make this because I'm going insane right now. So, I would consider myself a sub guy. The only anime I would watch dubbed is Bakugan. Not necessarily because I think the voice acting is better, it's mostly because I like the soundtrack of the Canadian version a lot more than the Japanese version, which sucks. A lot. Nevertheless, 99.8% of the time, I will watch anime sub regardless of how good everyone says the dub version is, because frankly, I don't give a shit. It's not a field of voice acting work that I'm particularly interested in checking out, but one phenomenon I'll often have to endure is very questionable attempts at translations, and I want to specifically talk about Crunchyroll and Netflix. Now Crunchyroll, for the most part, I don't often get distracted by poor attempts at translations, though then again, it's probably because I barely notice them since I don't exactly understand Japanese all that well, but every once in a while, I just look at some of their attempts and be like, what the fuck is wrong with you people? So the first time I felt inspired to point out how dumb their translations can be at times was when I was watching Hibike Euphonium, and I don't fully remember the context, but at some point Asuka was talking to Kimiko and she brought up a really good point about something. Then she ends her little rant by saying Chigao, and Crunchyroll decides to translate it to right. Now, I know that in context they mean pretty much the same thing, but why do they have to do that? Maybe this won't bother people as much, but the reason why this triggers me a little bit is that Chigao literally has the exact opposite meaning. Why couldn't they just translate it to am I wrong, or even just wrong? Like, even if it isn't as common to end sentences like this in English, I'm pretty sure people would still understand. I mean, to me, the point of subtitles is to replicate the original dialogue as much as they can. Yes, there will always be language barriers here and there, but I don't care that much about reading text that's closer to English linguistics. I'm way more concerned about preserving the original meaning as much as possible. But you know what? This is a case where I can somewhat forgive, because at least in the end, it means pretty much the same thing when taking into account the context. Now here's an example of just blatant retardation. So I was watching Girls and Panzer, and at some point I felt the urge to pause the episode because my mind had just processed the information gathered after reading the subtitles and spotted the inclusion of the term hide and seek. However, I didn't remember once hearing the word kakurembos said by any of the characters, so I decided to rewind and find out if I either glossed over her dialogue or maybe she used another term that meant hide and seek, which I wasn't aware of. But when I looked back at the scene, I did not spot any of that. Instead, I heard the character saying Onigoko, and I was just like, wait, you can't be serious. Did they seriously confuse hide and seek with fucking tag? Now, later in the same episode, the characters did describe the situation as resembling tag, so this was definitely a slip up. I don't believe the subbers actually think one means the other, but at some point, just replace the fucking subtitles. This isn't even a case of shitty localization. This is a blatant error. And I know this happens because they try to translate them immediately after they air, but I just don't understand why they can't correct them later. I don't know if it's just laziness or maybe altering subtitle text isn't as easy as I think it is, but I still think it's embarrassingly incompetent. But to give credit to Crunchyroll, they're definitely not as bad as Netflix. Now, I'm not gonna speak for their English subtitles because Netflix has this thing where, because I live in Portugal, some shows only have Portuguese subtitles available for me to use, even though they obviously have English subtitles imported in the database. They just won't give to us, presumably for licensing reasons. So I can only speak on behalf of Portuguese subs, which are fucking dog shit. The subtitles for real life are very wonky. Now, I didn't end up screen capping all of them because I wasn't really planning to make this video at the time, except for this one hilarious instance. Now, to give context, Real Life is a show where the main character, who's like 27 years old I think, gains a body of a teenager and goes to high school and shit. At some point during an episode, he held the hand of one of his female colleagues, which took him off his comfort zone since he was essentially making physical contact with a minor. He then inner monologues commenting on this very thing. This here is meant to be the translation of what he said. Now, if you speak Portuguese, you know exactly where the error lies, but I'm just gonna read it out loud for my fellow English-speaking viewers, and this is exactly what's written here. I held a student's mother, even if it was for a slight moment. Now, does that make any fucking sense to you based on the description of the scene that I gave? If not, don't worry, because there's actually a typo in the sentence. It should have been segurei a mão, not mãe. When I saw this, I was just laughing. It's such a dumb typo that can easily be fixed with a fucking Google Chrome extension like Grammarly or something. I expect these mistakes when reading tweets or something like that, not while reading subtitles written by professional translators. Just when I thought this couldn't get any lower, while watching the first episode of Your Lie in April, one of the characters says Watashimo, but for some reason they decided to translate it to Vamos, which roughly means let's go, and that's not even close to what she's actually saying in Japanese. It doesn't even make any sense to translate it that way. She's clearly following up to the main character's affirmation after the other guy asked if they wanted to buy something to eat. Why would they choose to, you know what, I'm getting a headache just trying to grasp the thought process of these lousy translators. And then later on, the same fucking girl tells the main character not to pursue the blonde girl because of how she seemed to be more into the other guy. And then I see this fucking shit, I'm just like, what is even going on? What the hell am I reading here? Her last sentence is her clearly telling the main character to give up on her. But instead, what's actually written here is, I know you. I know you. I can't even fathom how possible it is to deviate this fucking much. This is like Fighter Z levels of shitty localization. Honestly, I can't continue. All I can say right now is, actually, there is one thing I can say. It's that I tried watching the exact same episode on Crunchyroll, and they actually did have better translations. So, I will give credit to Crunchyroll. Fun fact, this part of the video actually wasn't scripted, so goodbye, I guess.